in a quiet residential neighborhood of Columbus, Ohio. The arrival of September painted the streets in soft hues of change. The summer heat had begun to fade, and the crisp whisper of fall could already be felt in the air. The maple trees, lined neatly along the sidewalks, were just beginning to turn, some leaves blushing orange, others fading into amber, promising the brilliant fire of autumn that was soon to come. On the corner of one such street stood a modest two-story house. Its white paint had dulled with age, but the windows were spotless, the lawn neatly trimmed, and a flower box filled with late-blooming marigolds added a touch of brightness to the porch. Inside lived Carol Wilson and her 16-year-old son, Tyler, the center of her world, the one constant in a life full of disappointments. Carol had worked at Adams Accounting for over a decade. She wasn't flashy, nor did she hold an executive title, but she had built a reputation of quiet reliability and precision. In the office, people trusted her. She was the one who never missed a deadline, who always remembered the smallest details, who kept calm when others scrambled. She kept her appearance as orderly as her work, her light brown hair neatly cut into a bob, her clothes modest yet perfectly pressed. Balance was her mantra. Between spreadsheets and motherhood, she lived by schedules written in neat handwriting on a corkboard by the kitchen door. That evening, as she checked over the calendar, Tyler's voice called from the staircase. "Mom, I'll be late today, so just heat up a frozen pizza for me." Carol turned, arching a brow. "What time will you be home? You need to be back by 10. I know, Tyler replied with the casual wave of a hand, already halfway out the door. Tall for his age, with the same light brown hair as his mother but striking blue eyes from his father, Tyler was handsome in the way that drew attention even when he didn't try. He was a sophomore in high school, played soccer with his friends, and carried himself with the careless energy of youth. Carol often smiled watching him, though sometimes, late at night, she also worried. He was her pride, her purpose, but he was also her vulnerability. That vulnerability had deep roots. 5 years earlier, Carol had divorced Michael Wilson, Tyler's father. Their marriage, once hopeful, had corroded under the weight of Michael's long nights, heavy drinking, and broken promises. The final straw came the night Michael forgot Tyler's 11th birthday. Carol remembered the look in her son's eyes when his father never came home with a cake, never even called. That night she resolved to walk away. Michael moved west after the divorce. He sent child support checks, called Tyler on birthdays and holidays, but otherwise drifted far from their lives. Carol's own family was no safe haven either. Her parents, Diane and Harold Johnson, lived comfortably in a large suburban home. Harold, a retired real estate executive, had built a small fortune. Diane played the part of the elegant society wife, mingling in charity events and book clubs. They had always been critical of Carol, too plain, too cautious, too ordinary in their eyes. "If you tried a little harder, you could live a much better life," Diane would say, a smile hiding the sting of her words. Her younger sister, Linda, was their golden child, spoiled and indulged from the start. Linda had been given everything Carol never received: an expensive car, trips to Europe, constant praise even when her efforts were minimal. Where Carol's straight A's in school were met with a nod, Linda's mediocre grades were celebrated as brilliance. That imbalance followed them into adulthood. Linda worked in fashion in Cincinnati, drove a shiny BMW their parents had gifted her, and often lorded her glamorous lifestyle over Carol with a condescending smile. Still, Carol endured it all with quiet strength. She had grown used to being overlooked, used to being told to be patient. Over time, she stopped expecting approval or affection from her parents or sister. She poured everything into her own small family, into Tyler. "Tyler, you are my pride and joy," she would often tell him. And Tyler, though young, understood. He knew his mother carried the weight of everything on her shoulders. He studied hard, practiced soccer with discipline, and quietly dreamed of one day becoming a doctor so he could help people the way his mother helped him. For Carol, that dream was enough to keep her going. But fate has its way of testing even the strongest. On a Tuesday evening, Carol was chopping vegetables for dinner when she realized Tyler was later than usual. The clock ticked past 7:30, then 8 o'clock. His practice shouldn't have lasted this long. She paused, knife in hand, and walked to the front window, peering into the dimming street. Her stomach tightened with unease. She tried calling him, but the phone rang endlessly. No answer. Probably just fooling around with his friends, she muttered, though her chest ached with worry. 10 minutes later, her phone rang. She snatched it up, relief flashing across her face, only to see an unknown number on the screen. "Hello, this is Carol Wilson," she said cautiously. The voice on the other end was calm, professional. "This is Jones from the emergency department at Mercy General Hospital. Your son has been in a traffic accident. Could you come to the hospital immediately?" For a second, the words didn't make sense. Her brain refused to process them. What accident? My son, Tyler? What happened? Is he? "We'll explain when you arrive. Please come as soon as possible." The line clicked dead. Carol's phone slipped in her hand. She grabbed her purse and keys, leaving the stove burning, not even bothering with a coat. Outside, a cold September rain had begun to fall, soaking her hair as she sprinted to the car. The dashboard clock read 8:15. The drive to Mercy General was 20 minutes, but every second felt like a knife twisting in her chest. "Tyler, it's okay," she whispered, gripping the wheel. "Mama's coming. Hold on." When she screeched into the hospital parking lot and dashed through the sliding glass doors of the emergency entrance, her heart was hammering so hard she could barely breathe. "Tyler Wilson," she gasped to the receptionist. A nurse appeared and guided her through sterile hallways that smelled faintly of antiseptic and fear. A middle-aged doctor met her outside a curtained room, his face solemn. "Your son was struck by a car while crossing an intersection with a friend. He suffered severe head trauma, there is internal bleeding, and his intracranial pressure is dangerously high. He's in a coma." The words echoed in Carol's ears, hollow and terrifying. Her knees buckled. The doctor caught her elbow. "We're preparing him for emergency surgery. We'll do everything we can." Will he live?" she whispered. The doctor's silence stretched before he finally said, "We'll fight for him, but the outcome is uncertain." Hours blurred together as Carol sat outside the operating room, hands clasped so tightly her knuckles turned white. She thought of Tyler's first steps, his laughter as a child, his soccer games, the way he had smiled just that morning before leaving the house. She prayed, though she wasn't even sure to whom. At 1:00 a.m., the doctor emerged, his face tired but steady. "The surgery was successful. We stopped the bleeding and reduced the pressure, but he remains in a coma. The next 48 hours will be critical." Carol stumbled into the ICU, her heart shattering at the sight of her son. His face was bruised, part of his head bandaged, tubes and wires surrounding him. Machines beeped softly, each sound both a comfort and a torment. She reached for his hand, warm but limp in hers. Leaning close, she whispered through her tears, "Mama is here. Sweetheart, you're strong. Please wake up." Carol quickly pressed the nurse call button, her hand trembling. The seconds felt like hours until Becky rushed in, clipboard in hand, her eyes alert. "What happened?" Becky asked. Carol's voice shook with both fear and excitement. "His fingers moved, just a little, but I'm sure it wasn't my imagination." Becky leaned over Tyler, gently lifting his hand, testing the reflexes with practiced precision. Her face remained calm, but her words carried a glimmer of hope. "It could just be a reflex, but even so, it's a sign. I'll report this to Dr. Ramsey immediately." Carol exhaled, her chest rising and falling with relief. It wasn't much, but after weeks of waiting in silence, that tiny flicker of movement meant the world. That night, on Becky's gentle suggestion, Carol finally allowed herself to step away for a few hours. She borrowed the hospital's shower facilities, then sat in the restroom stall for a while, hugging her knees, crying into her hands. Before leaving Tyler's room, she whispered at his bedside, "I'll be back in the morning. Sweetheart, don't worry, Mama's not leaving you." When she returned the next morning, the air in the room was different, charged with anticipation. The medical team had gathered around Tyler's bed, discussing the latest test results. Dr. Ramsey's voice was steady but hopeful as he explained, "We're seeing new changes in Tyler's brainwaves. His level of consciousness is improving. We need to continue monitoring carefully, but this is a very positive sign." Carol pressed her hand to her mouth, tears spilling freely. "Thank you," she whispered. her heart surging with hope for the first time in weeks. From that moment, Carol devoted herself fully to Tyler's recovery. Every day she read to him his favorite adventure novels, news from school, and stories about his friends. Sometimes, his classmates came by, speaking nervously to him as if their words might stir him back to life. 2 weeks after the accident, on a Monday morning, Carol's cell phone buzzed. The screen displayed Linda's name. Her stomach tightened. She hesitated, then answered. "Carol, it's been a while," Linda said cheerfully, as though nothing had happened. "I heard about Tyler. I'm so worried." Carol's voice was flat. "Hello. I spoke to Mom. She said you hung up on her. She's only concerned, you know." Carol gave a sharp, bitter smile. "Concerned? Talking about insurance money isn't concern." Linda paused, then spoke carefully. "Mom and Dad asked me to call. They're worried about Tyler too." "Really?" Carol's tone dripped with sarcasm. "Or are they just waiting for updates about the insurance payout?" Anger boiled inside her. "Tyler is alive. This isn't the time to talk about money." "Of course," Linda said quickly. "It's just being prepared for the worst. You must be overwhelmed alone. Maybe financial assistance." "Assistance?" Carol's voice shook. "My son is fighting for his life. And you people care only about money. That's all you ever think about." "That's not what I meant." "That's enough." Carol cut her off, her voice quiet but firm. "Don't call again. I have no business with you or our parents anymore." She ended the call with a sharp tap. For a long moment, she sat frozen, then released a heavy breath. Anger, sadness, and something new swirled inside her, a strange sense of freedom. She no longer needed to expect anything from them. Back in Tyler's room, Carol found Elena Sanchez, the hospital social worker, waiting with a warm but serious expression. Elena often visited, listening to Carol's struggles, offering advice. "You look shaken," Elena said gently. "What happened?" Carol recounted the call, her voice bitter. Elena listened carefully, then leaned forward. "Miss Wilson, I strongly advise you to keep records, emails, texts, calls, even recordings. Their behavior suggests an unhealthy financial interest in Tyler's situation." Carol frowned. "Recordings? Is that legal here?" "In Ohio, yes. One-party consent. You only need to be aware. A recording app could be very useful." That evening, Carol downloaded an app and tested it. She never imagined her life would come to this, protecting her son not just from illness, but from her own family. Days passed. Insurance documents arrived. Endless forms and signatures. Carol spent hours reviewing every detail, making sure nothing could be twisted or misused. Nancy from accounting noticed her troubled look. "Everything all right?" Nancy asked. "It's fine," Carol said with a weary smile. "Just that my family seems far too interested in the insurance money." Nancy gave her a look of sympathy. "That happens more often than you'd think. If you need help, my office is open." By the end of that week, Tyler's medical team met again. Dr. Ramsey's expression carried cautious optimism. "We're seeing consistent improvement. His reflexes are stronger. His brain activity suggests real progress. It won't be easy, but the signs are encouraging." Carol clasped her hands together, whispering thanks. Hope glowed inside her, fragile but powerful. That evening, as rain tapped against the hospital windows, Carol sat by Tyler's bed, holding his hand. "It won't be long now, sweetheart," she whispered. "You're coming back. I'll be right here waiting for you." Then it happened. A faint sound broke the steady beeps of the machines. "Mom." Carol froze. She stared at her son's face, his eyelids fluttering open, his gaze weak but focused on her. "Tyler?" she gasped, rushing to his side. "Can you hear me? It's Mom." His lips moved again, barely audible. "Mom, where?" Carol slammed the nurse button, tears flooding her eyes as she clutched his hand. Becky and the team rushed in, summoning Drive. "Ramsey." Carol leaned close, whispering, "You're safe. You're in the hospital. You had an accident, but you're back with me now." Dr. Ramsey examined him quickly, asking, "What's your name?" "Tyler Wilson," he croaked. "What grade are you in?" He paused, then whispered, "Sophomore, high school." Dr. Ramsey nodded, relief softening his features. His cognitive functions are intact. He's fully conscious. When the doctors finally stepped out, Carol stayed by his side, her heart pounding. How long? Tyler asked weakly. 3 weeks, she answered softly. You've been asleep. He blinked slowly. Were you scared? Carol's tears returned. Yes, terrified. But you were strong. So strong. The next morning, Tyler stayed awake longer. Though his body was frail, the rehabilitation team came in, gently testing his movement. It's remarkable, said Michael Chin, the physical therapist. His recovery potential is high. It won't be easy, but he'll make it. Carol could hardly contain her joy. She called her friends, her workplace, spreading the miracle. Encouraging words poured in, lifting her spirit. Then, just as she was helping Tyler with breakfast the next day, the hospital door opened. Her breath caught. Standing in the doorway were her parents and Linda. Carol, Diane said quickly, her tone rehearsed. We heard Tyler woke up. We came as soon as we could. Carol's pulse quickened. She forced her face into calmness for Tyler's sake. Tyler, she said, her voice steady but her heart thundering. These are your grandma, grandpa, and Aunt Linda.